What is the most annoying time that you have tried to convince someone you did something and their response was just yeah, sure you did? I sliced a jenga block out from the tower with the hotel card key from about 15 feet away. The only people that believe me are the ones who got mad at me for interrupting their game. The drummer for Rusted Root lives near me and did a class for new drummers where you get to hand drum and he just kind of explains rhythm in a hippie way. So, it's a drum circle. Basically. Anyway, I have a friend from college who's a big fan, and I mentioned that I got to take a few drum classes with him, and my friend just immediately blew it off with yeah right. It was really weird because we're all over 30. We're not kids, lying about stuff. If he'd asked for any detail, I could have explained it further. He literally leaned to someone else in the group and said yeah, right. No hint at irony or subtlety. A few months later, another class was announced and I sent him an invitation to go with me. He just said he was busy. Should go and get a short video of yourself with the drummer saying wish you could have made it. Your friend would probably claim a photo was edited so a quick video would shut him down. In high school, some kids were talking about ligers for some reason. I later found out the reason was Napoleon Dynamite. I never saw it. I'd seen one in person and said so. I think I said something nerdy about how ligers are the world's biggest cats, bigger than lions or tigers. This kid gave me the world's douchebaggiest smirk and said ligers aren't real. This was before smartphones, so I was never able to prove him wrong. When I first saw Napoleon Dynamite I thought ligers were just something made up for the movie until the really crappy little zoo in my town got one. If that zoo can get a liger I feel like it's probably not very hard to breed one at all, and I can't believe I had never heard of a liger until that stupid movie. When I was a kid, my dad yelled at me for not picking up my stuff from the main area, but I had nothing I could say convinced him, and I got in trouble. A few days later, he pulled me aside and apologized because he watched my toddler sister go in my room and walk out with a bunch of my toys and clothes, played with them in the living room and then wandered off, leaving a similar mess to the one my dad found a few days back. Your dad seems like a good dad. A lot of adults wouldn't apologize and own up to their mistake. Came home from a track meet when I was 16 and proudly told my parents my relay team broke the 4x mile school record. I was a mediocre runner most of my life, but that was the year I realized I was much better at mid distances than the longer ones I had been running. My parents' response was okay, sure you did. Nothing I said could convince them, but it became a family inside joke. 10 years later, my grandfather mails me an article he clipped out of the local paper stating the record had been beaten, and there was my name on the team who previously held it. I called my mom, said I told you I had a school record, and she responded with well, you don't have one anymore. I also want to state that my parents are lovely people and track was not something that was important to me. I realize they sound really mean-spirited. I wrote an essay for a project in biology on something or other, but got told it couldn't possibly be me that wrote it and it was probably copied. I explained myself and gave it back to the teacher, who pretty much said sure, whatever, and then never marked it. I have issues like this in uni. My writing is very technical and concise. My verbal communication can be really inarticulate and spacey. So it seems that someone else writes my papers. It's just that I've got a lot of social anxiety issues in my classroom and cannot communicate as well with these intimidating people as I can through my papers or school placement programs. I understand you. I took a picture of the moon through a telescope. It was in my camera roll, but my boss still didn't believe that I took the dang picture. I broke my hand when I was in high school during the end of the year, right before I had to do a music exam that involved me performing. I explained to the teacher that didn't like me that obviously I couldn't perform because my hand was broken and it was in a cast. She didn't believe me. She thought I put the cast on myself to get out of doing the exam and made me get a doctor's note to prove it. Yes, this student obviously made their own hospital grade cast and put it on perfectly with one hand. They also faked x-rays and forged legal documents from the doctor. See? Saved my little sister from drowning in a family friend's pool. My parents were sitting up on their balcony, but weren't looking at the pool and missed the whole thing. Totally didn't believe me. I was so miffed. They can't believe you. They don't want to admit they almost let their daughter drown through negligence. It's incompatible with their opinions of themselves. I'm a doctor and there is a procedure called a precordial thump. Basically, when someone is having a specific type of heart arrhythmia, you can't hit someone in the chest and restart their heart. And I did this on an elderly lady in 80s at my hospital. It was the talk of my for a week or so. Fast forward 3 weeks and I'm at my wife's friend's wedding, who is also a doctor, but is a doctor at MGH, Harvard affiliate program. My wife tells a few people at the wedding the story and all of the Harvard people were like, no, that doesn't work. Even the hardest punch only transmits 15 joules, etc. etc. They kept telling me that the research doesn't show it works. Freaking nerds. I was there. I punched the lady. She woke up and her heart went back to a normal rhythm. Maybe if they got out of the books and exercised they would have the scale mass to do a real precordial thump. TLDR. I punched an old lady back to life. Harvard nerds didn't believe me. Nurse. Frantically. Doctor. Do something. Doc. Sure I can. In the 7th grade, my butthole of an English teacher told the class to write a recount of an experience that you actually went through. I wrote about the time when I fell off my billy cart during a billy cart race and badly cut my elbow. When returning the marked recounts, she pulled me out of class and said that my recount wasn't realistic enough and I didn't actually experience that. She was dead serious and I couldn't change her mind. In my high school French class, a student raised her hand and asked the teacher, "What language do they speak in Europe?" Of course the teacher had to explain that different European countries speak different languages, to which the student responded, "What about Albania? What do they speak there? How do you say hello in Albanian?" Well, I know some Albanian, so I responded, "Persian dej." The whole class laughed, and the teacher yelled at me and told me to stop clowning around. I tried to explain that I actually knew Albanian. She threatened to send me to the principal's office. I am Latin American. In high school, I once jokingly told a friend during English class that dong was another name for rooster in English. The English teacher heard and went apeshit saying I was saying obscene words during class because that word, dong, only meant one thing. I explained it could also mean rooster, but she called me a liar. I probably deserved that, but it peed me off that an English teacher didn't knew dong could also mean rooster. That's kind of weird. I am in the US and I seen it used all my life to mean a rooster in English. What the heck did that teacher thinks a cockfight is? Or maybe I do want to know. I threw 3 darts at the same time and all 3 hit bullseye. No one believes me, so I don't bring it up anymore. I took a pic, but that proves nothing. My witness is an ex. I'm married now. She's engaged, so I'm not gonna hit her up for corroboration. Saw a friend I hadn't seen in like a decade. They asked what I'd been up to. I told them I joined the Marine Corps, got out, went to law school and am now a corporate attorney. They laughed in my face and said, "Yeah right." I said, "No really." They still just laughed and wouldn't believe. They work at Best Buy. And that is how you don't keep friends. By laugh at them. 2 things. 1. My family is friends with Lance Armstrong. My town has an annual bike race he used to attend, and because my mom happened to work for the company running the race, she became rather good friends with Mr. Armstrong. He was always very nice and polite to both my mother and my family, and it's kind of sad that we lost contact with him after his confession. I have pictures buried somewhere, but no one believes me. 2. My dad is second cousins with Roberto Clemente. He was related to him on his mother's side. Dad was half Puerto Rican, and Roberto used to play baseball in the backyard of my dad's childhood house. A few times he went back to Puerto Rico to visit. When I was in the 4th grade, my class happened to be reading a story about Roberto and I mentioned, "Hey, that's my cousin." I kept insisting on it until my teacher sat me down and basically told me, "You're a liar. You're not even Puerto Rican. So stop making up stories, frick you Mrs. Tate." I got a family tree to fricking prove it. I have my own story about this. My middle school Spanish teacher was Lance's aunt. Everyone in our class called BS and she made a big stink about it. This was before smartphones, and she had a different last name. Years later I saw her on TV talking about Lance and had to eat crow. At the gymnasium at my local Y, It was empty one day, so I asked if I could go goof around with a soccer ball for a while. After a few minutes of bashing long balls off the wall, I started trying to kick the ball in the basketball nets. It didn't go great. Then at the end, when I was about to leave, took one last long bomb from half court and sunk that thing off the backboard. I told my buddy when he came down from the gym. Didn't believe me, of course. I asked the front desk if they had any dang cameras on that gym, but no, privacy. I've probably told half a dozen other random strangers about this featuring. Still no proof though. That I could pick up an anchor chain link when I was in the Navy. These things were easily 50 pounds on my ship, but I'm a tiny 90 pounds woman, so nobody could believe that I could deadlift it. Picked that sucker up myself and even carried it about 10 featuring before I had to put it back down to rest. Never been prouder to prove a bunch of boatswainmates wrong. I actually just posted about this for the first time, but I went to school with 2 English princesses. My parents moved us all over the world for my dad's job. The first place we went was the UK and we lived in Ascot. We weren't posh at all, lived in a servant's cottage. I was enrolled in the local Montessori school and Eugenie and Beatrice were my classmates. I have a class photo with all of us. It's pretty cool to see my name and then HRH Eugenie and HRH Beatrice. I don't carry the photo around with me, so no one ever believes me. My family and I have a running joke though that it's so rude of the royal family to not invite me to weddings because we were obviously so close when we were children. I hope the Queen sees this, takes offense you have been ignored, and invites you to the next wedding. I play video games with my girlfriend even though she's not very good at them in comparison. I've done some pro-am stuff at low levels, nothing to get my name out there but fairly competitive within the communities. Anytime I slip up or she does something cool, she thinks I messed up on purpose so she does better, or I set her up instead of her actually doing something impressive. She loves RS credits, so if she sees this I hope she realizes she's better than she thinks. Wholesome upvote. Probably when I hit the 1000 lb club in powerlifting, a decent advanced intermediate achievement, well within normal human capability, and was sneeringly accused of steroid use. I lived in Paris, France for a year and a half when I was 15 because my father was working abroad. Nobody ever believes me when I say, oh, I lived in Paris. The doubly annoying part is I was only 15. And from my perspective I was getting ripped from my peer groups twice over. I stumbled down some stairs on bright and sunshiny high school morning and thought I'd sprained my foot. My first hour theater class was in the middle of slapstick and mime, so I asked the teacher to let me sit because of the fall. He didn't believe me but did allow me to stay seated. Next class period he asked me sarcastically if I was well enough to participate. I showed him the cast up to my knee and said I could manage some of it. I'd broken a couple bones in my foot. Turns out, he graded me well after that point because I wasn't full of crap. Conversely, users at my office have twice now tried to convince me they rebooted their computers when they did not. There is an uptime counter in Task Manager. This is one of the things I'm checking as I actually ask if they've rebooted recently. Here on Reddit, I'm a recognized expert in a particular field and some basement-dwelling Wikipedia reader managed to convince an entire thread that I was the one lying about my expertise, and that is intuitively truthy but factually wrong. Take on the subject was actually correct. When I was 16 I was treated for a cancerous growth in my mouth and someone tried to tell me I was making it all up for sympathy. Like I go around pretending to be a cancer survivor for attention. I used to be friends with Penguin Zero on Steam. I didn't even know he was on YouTube for almost the entire time we were friends. This was around 2011, so he wasn't that well known then. He is honestly one of my favorite YouTubers. I am pretty jealous of that. I played online poker for a living from 2005 to 2011. Black Friday, the day online poker died. People would ask me what I do for a living and just instantly assume I had a gambling addiction and was massively in debt when I was actually doing pretty well for myself. It never mattered how much I explained how poker wasn't gambling to people. Sometimes they were just convinced that I was going to lose it all or was straight up lying. That time that I was in People magazine. It's not unrealistic, I guess. but it was the sexiest man alive issue. Totally unrelated to that, but my picture was attached to an article on the very last page. Was singing Christmas carols to kids in the hospital with former tennis great, Andrea Giga. I wrote a job advertisement yesterday, but my parents told me they knew I had played video games all day. I spent a whole 4 hours on this dang paper and all they had to say was yeah sure you did. Quite the opposite actually, but a fun story regardless. Some of my good friends in college lived in a house together our senior year and I spent enough time there to pretty much be their 6th roommate. It is also important to point out that I was by far and away the biggest shithead of the group. This will be important later, so commit it to memory. Their house came to be the central hangout for our wider friend group for movie nights, televised sporting events, and pre-gaming the bars. One Sunday morning when we were all coming to the house to watching 7 hours of football, it was discovered that the framed poster of a Bengal tiger, who we came to refer to as Samson, that hung above their non-functional fireplace, as well as a poster of the Kramer, had been vandalized. Some hooligan found it in their infinite wisdom to put googly eyes on them. None of the housemates would dare destroy this beautiful piece of wall art, and I, being the usual, and often rightful, scapegoat for such shenanigans, was naturally selected as the prime suspect. Now, hand to God, I didn't do the googly eye prank, but our entire final semester of school it was widely believed and accepted that I was the googly eye, and every attempt I made to clear my name was met with yeah sure and balls from the collective. Every single time. This false accusation still haunts me today. Toolbox boys, if you're out there, I swear upon all that is holy that I didn't besmirch Samson's majesty with the googly eyes. It was probably Keith. Damn it, Keith. I'm one of the nerdier people I know, and gladly own the bookish, PC gamer attitude and look I have. No one ever believes that before university, when I was in the army, that I was attached and basically functioned as special forces, doing special forces things. Then I got out, had lung troubles so couldn't stay in shape, and got back to being a nerd. You're like Gus from Recess. I ran the entire IT department as an internet and non-profit. Of course, the entire IT department was essentially volunteers, but yeah, I had hiring managers who reviewed my resume tell me I was bullshitting, and it made me a bit mad because literally you could ask the executive director there and he would tell you that my resume is accurate. Either way, I have experience now and I'm a developer now, so it doesn't matter, but yeah, it was annoying. On a canoe trip, looking for the next portage, land crossing to the next lake where you need to carry your canoe supplies etc, which because of a lot of bays and outcroppings in this long lake was tough to find. Right away I look down the lake and notice what I am sure is a white flag attached to a tree on the other side. Always had awesome eyesight. Drink your apple juice kids, ask leader if this is what they're looking for. They get excited, say yes, but then when I say I saw it on the other side, probably over a kilometer away, they were like oh yeah sure, maybe we'll check out this closer one first. Searched all these bays taking like an hour until finally they relent and try out my suggestion. Totally right, exactly where I said it was. They couldn't believe it and jokingly called me eagle eyes for a while after. I told my mom that I left college because I was raped and she didn't believe me, and people wonder why victims don't always report. I'm sorry, what a horrible thing to happen. I managed to stack 52 beer mass, flip them off the edge of a table, and caught them with one hand whilst I was very drunk. I have big hands but it's still ridiculously hard, so no one thinks it's a plausible story. Me and my friends had been doing it for ages in the pub, so they all eventually got bored, but I carried on. None of them witnessed it. That's seriously impressive. My record was 30 and I wasn't even that drunk. My English teacher in high school returned a piece of creative writing I'd done, and said the only reason I didn't get the top marks for the piece was because there was a spelling mistake. I looked down at the one word circled. It was the word won't. Now this had obviously been confused with the word won't, as she was wont to be lazy and not read for context. I whipped out a dictionary to prove to her that I hadn't made a mistake, and that I should receive top marks. She read the word definition and said that it was still wrong. She told me to sign the mark acknowledgement form and hand back my writing so she could send it away for moderation. I walked straight out of class with it and went to the head of department. The head read it through a few times and couldn't find anything wrong with the piece. She crossed out the mark my teacher had given and gave me the full 100%. She also wrote my teacher an angry note about using the dictionary if she wasn't familiar with a word. TLDR. My English teacher was too lazy to use a dictionary, and that almost cost me a higher grade, even when I used the dictionary to prove my point. When I was 17, promised my evil stepmom I'd pick up her psychopath son from school. On the way home my new to me used car ran out of gas, but still showed a quarter tank on the gauge. I attempted to call her from the payphone nearest to my car to tell her I couldn't pick her kid up, but the payphone wouldn't ring her number. I got the fast busy signal after dialing the first 3 digits. She refused to believe my story, insisted I forgot and was trying to cover it with a lie. I pushed my car to the gas station. Got stranded for a day in NY when a flight delay made me miss my connecting flight. My boss called balls. I was I never lied to him. Your boss must have never flown through NY. Delays are normal there. The first time I ever broke 50 in a round of golf without cheating, I went home and told my mom and my dad, and after having tried for years I got the "oh that's great honey" meaning sure you did. It wasn't until my friend's dad saw the scores of the match listed in the paper that he cut it out and gave it to my mom that she actually believed I did it. In my parents' defense though, I was a god-awful golfer, so I can understand their skepticism to a degree. Took this girl on a date and afterwards she insisted on giving me a rim job. I hesitantly accepted and it was actually pretty enjoyable, but nobody believes me when I tell them about it. I wonder what a long-term relationship is like with someone who wants to give her on the first date. A close family friend passed away from the choking game when I was a kid. In high school, for some reason we were discussing the choking game in PE, and I decided to share with the class what happened and the effects the event had on the whole family and community he lived in. Got a lot of "yeah, sure that happened." Honestly it was just really confusing, like I didn't see what made it so hard to believe. I am a private pilot, but I accidentally left my license at home when I went to college. Whenever it came up and I told someone, they'd be like "okay, let's see it," and I'd explain that I didn't have it, but I'd show them pictures of me flying and show them my shirt tail from my first solo as evidence that I at least did fly planes, which should make the fact that I have my private more believable, but nobody would believe me. Now, after I have my license with me, I've shown them, and they're just like "okay, whatever." Told my parents I said "pee off" to the president of our country. To put it in context, I was in a bank at the ATM alone in the room. Suddenly a car drives up and here comes the president. He comes in and says "if Joe," which is the same as he would say "sup." Should have said "Dobadan, good day." I straight up said to him, "Don't you sup me, we didn't grow up together herding sheep." Also a saying in my country. Totally shut him down. May I also say that I really dislike the sucker and how he doesn't do crap for me or people like me. Happens all the time. I open up on Reddit about my childhood sexual assaults and torture. Because I cannot talk about it, I roll. It shakes me to the core and I can only vent about it behind an anonymous moniker. I talked about it quite a bit during the Kavanaugh drama because I know what it was like to open up about it and someone call you a liar to your face and threaten to beat you if you ever spoke up about it again. So, of course, I got an idiot in Reddit that sent me a PM saying I was full of crap. I just ignored the message. But still, why would I want to double down on this? It is hard enough talking about it the first time and this person clearly has their mind made up. I shot an acorn out of a lawnmower and it gashed my leg open so bad I have a scar. I told this story in AP English and my teacher, who had a PhD, Dr. Mills, kept telling me that was ridiculous and he didn't understand why I would make that up. He kept it as a running joke the whole year, calling me Acorn Boy. I was at my brother's mowing his yard and was trying to push the mower through an area of his yard covered in leaves and acorns, and felt searing pain in my leg, and saw something bouncing around beside my leg, and it was an acorn. My leg was cut really badly at the shin. I mean, I didn't see bone or anything but noticed there's basically a sharp little pointy end on acorns. Had to be a 1 in a million shot. Frick you Dr. Mills, you're cool as heck but didn't know crap about my Acorn woes. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.